Hi, I'm Diana with transformhealth.biz, and I'm here today to interview Leigh Dundas. And she's a spitfire of a woman. She's involved with civil rights, and she's got books and courses. She's organized the Southern California trucker protests against the COVID shots, and she's going to here to tell us about her course and her book, and stem cells and better water. And take it away, Leigh.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today, Diana. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here and get to be talking about all my favorite subjects. But yeah, true that. I think most people who've heard my name at this point probably associate it with, me having a bullhorn in my hand and screaming at our local tyrants here in California, or doing the trucker convoy that went from Adelanto Barstow area out here all the way to DC. But before that point in time, I was actually a human rights attorney. We did a lot of work fighting the child brothel trade. As you can see, this girl's face is actually pixelated out, but it's weird when I'm on Zoom sometimes. It almost, I don't know if AI tries to fill it in or what, but that was me in a child brothel, literally in Asia. We were working in a town that had 140 child brothels in it, in the deep south of Thailand, right along the Malaysia countryside there. And it was crazy. I mean, I had never been in a town like that before. I was born and raised in Whittier, California, single white soccer mom of an 8-year-old when I started doing this work. And all of a sudden I was in this town that had nothing but child brothels in it. And complicating factors was the fact that across the river on the Malay side of the border, it was all under radical jihadi Islamic control. And for their part, they wanted to keep their bombing skills sharp. And so they would just bomb the heck out of the brothels, literally like all the darn time. I can't, no, I don't know. I think maybe it's in, I have a picture. No, I don't think I have a picture, but we would literally have bombs go off like daily. So the first year I worked there in 2013, we had 330 bombs go off that year. And if that doesn't really make you grateful to be alive and having a wonderful family here in America and grateful for all of our rights that we have here in America. I don't really know what would, but this is, I don't know if it'll show on the Zoom, but that is what the town looks like after a bomb goes off. And it is just crazy. I mean, it's stuff that you don't really see here in America, at least not usually. And then on the other page, what you're seeing here, ironically, this was February of 2014, and this is literally when the Thai people had a coup d'etat. And why were they, having a coup and running their government out of Dodge on a rail? They had lost the right to honestly elect those that would serve them in leadership positions. And so literally every 6.5 years on average, Diana, you have the Thai people rousting their bad government and trying to install a new good one to no avail. For the last 100 years, they've been doing this same cycle. So note to America, side note, not what we're talking about today as much, but election integrity is really important. America isn't perfect. Our system of government is far from perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than most of the rest of the world has. Dictatorships, totalitarian regimes, fascist, communist, Marxist, socialist regimes, you don't want that. Those girls are living in those brothels because their parents sell them. And the reason the families are selling them is not because they're evil, not because they're satanic, not because they're serial killer inclined. They are literally moms, like moms everywhere. And they are so poor that literally their children are dying. And so the brothels come to town and they say, give us your oldest daughter. We'll pay you the equivalent of $300 US for the year. And that feeds a family of 10 in Laos for literally a year or two, because of the difference in their currency to ours and whatnot. And I'm not here to say selling your children is a good idea, but I am here to tell you that when we were doing an interview of her friend in a brothel with a documentary Christian film crew out of Australia, young guys, they're sitting there with their hands on the cameras. We asked the girl, her friend, we said, did you know when you got to this town what you would be doing? And she said, I knew. And she was about 12 at the time, sitting there in her little peach dress, like she was going to cotillion. She was late for a date. She was the only girl in the whole town brave enough to actually be interviewed by us. And it was 6 o'clock at night, sun is setting. We've got her face in shadows in the corner of the room, like a 20/20 or a 60 Minutes thing. And the question we had posed is, did you know when you got here what you'd be doing? And I'll never forget her answer. She looked dead into the camera And she said, I knew exactly what I'd be doing, but I'm not unhappy because my 7 brothers and sisters have food on the table, as does my mother, and they're not starving to death right now. And if you had asked me, like literally even a minute before that conversation occurred, hey, Leigh, do you think it's wrong to sell your kid to a brothel? I'm like, yeah, you and me, Diana, and everybody else listening to this in America anyway, really probably would have had but one response. But the question you need to ask yourself now, having heard that story, is not, why are people selling kids to brothels, but how do you get so damn poor that the only option on the table, the best option, your only real option on the table is to sell your kid or not sell your kid and watch 100% of your children and you and your husband starve to death? Is that a better end of that particular
Yeah, how does
calculus?
that happen? How does that happen with the political system?
That is the question. So that girl, along with 90% of the girls in the Thai brothels that we rescue in Thailand, are not from Thailand. They're from Laos. Guess what Laos is? A currently communist country. Or they're from Cambodia, next door to Thailand. Guess what Cambodia is? May as well be a communist country. They had a communist overthrow under the direction of Pol Pot in the 70s when you and I were kids. And they rounded up somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of the Cambodian population and shot them in the back of the head, or using hatchets in the back of the neck, because you can reuse those, and bullets you cannot reuse, and let them fall face down into shallow graves. That's how communism rolls. So the fact that right now in America, we have 51% of our kids on college campuses who, when you stick a mic in front of their face, like we're doing today, and you say, hey, honey, do you think it would be cool to live in a communist or socialist country? Fully half, 51% of our kids at college campuses from DC to Texas to Cali go, yeah, I think it'd be cool. That is a freaking problem.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, actually. You said that in 1963, communist agendas were read into congressional record, and you talked about the teachers union being taken over. And I'm just wondering what that looks like. Specifically, the teachers union, you have to say on your website, to be used as a transmission belt, quote, for the purveying of current communist and socialist propaganda, softening student curriculum. I definitely see that. You're talking about the feelings. How would you feel if someone enslaved you? How would you feel if you were a Jew in World War II? And then gaining control of student newspapers. I'm just wondering about how the teachers unions were taken over, and we're talking about American citizens. So
yeah. Well, I mean, they have been, in 1956, to set the stage, Khrushchev said, I will take America without firing a single shot. I will destroy her from within. They knew America was way too big, way too well fortified with our US military coming out of World War II to ever have. And if you study military tactics, right? My husband's ex-Army. My grandfather was on the deck of the West Virginia when it was shot out from under him in Pearl Harbor. My dad was US Navy. If you look at America, is that America? Can you see America there? You have a really hard problem attacking us. We didn't used to have foreign land masses near us, with the exception of Cuba, which is really tiny. But prior to the 50s, 60s, there was nobody in this side of the world that posed a threat to us. They weren't going to invade us by border. We have sea, a lot of sea, big amounts of sea between us and Europe and us and Asia and Australia. And especially before they had like long range nukes, we were a big island by ourselves, kind of like Australia, a lot of land mass, hard to take over. Canada was a friend of the north. Mexico was a non-entity to the south. Nothing in South America was, posing a threat to us. We had what is known as highly defensible borders, because you had to come at us by ocean, and that's its own thing. And we would see you coming and put you to bed before you ever got here. So Khrushchev and communists realized early, we weren't at the time an easily invaded country. They weren't going to win a toe-to-toe fight with us.
a direct war. So
a direct war. Exactly. No direct war was going to,
So what does it look like? Yeah.
So they were going to do a slow burning war. They were going to take over our kids. And so what communism did is they had a bunch of goals. You don't even have to DuckDuckGo it. You can Google it and look up the communist goals for America. And there were like 40 or 50 of them, but they centered on destroying the family unit and churches and taking over schools. Because if you can gain the youth, especially when they're all gung-ho to join a cause, they don't really care so much what cause. They're just, when you're young, you're all excitable, you want to be part of the group, you're easily led into group activities. And if you know anything about group psychology, It pushes all the feel-good chemicals in people to be around others that are doing the same thing. But you need to be careful. That can be used for good. You know, if you're doing a church group thing, it can be used for bad if you're Hitler and taking over Germany's youth, right? So they knew, taking a cue from Hitler, they knew that they needed to focus on our youth. So they wanted to take over teachers' unions, take over student press, soften our curriculum, and literally start putting communist socialist propaganda into our curriculum. And now they have. And in so doing, they wanted to destroy the family unit. And how do you do that? You normalize sexual perversion, because if I'm gay, I'm not procreating. If I am having sex with animals, I'm not procreating. If I think I'm asexual, I'm not procreating. If all the stuff that you see today, oh, you know, be non-binary, be asexual, be gay, be this, be a trans. If you're cutting off your body parts, even if you regret your decision later, you're not going to be able to procreate. All of this are tiny little tributary inroads to the Mississippi River of destroying the family unit. Why? The family unit is the single biggest bulwark and defensible unit, along with church and other things, against totalitarian overthrows. But if you destroy it, you got nothing. So when the communists came into Cambodia, they literally drove these families who they didn't execute immediately out into the countryside. And they went after the people who wore glasses. They went after the people who did not have intellectuals who did not have calluses on their hands. They went after people like us, teachers, radio podcasty people at the time, doctors, lawyers, accountants, you know, government workers, anybody that looked like white collar intellectual. Why? We have time, we have resources, we're smart, we have money, and those are threats if you're looking to take over a society, because we can pose a rebellion to that, you know, a counter resistance. So they herded everybody out into the countryside saying, oh, communism is going to make you happy. You're going to be happy because we're all equal. You're going to own the means of production. They didn't tell them they were going to starve them to death. And literally, when they didn't starve quickly enough, they dragged the kids and the parents away from each other. They kept them in separate camps. They would see each other twice a day when they were coming to and from food, which was a half a cup of rice that was full of worms and nothing to keep anybody alive on. And they told the kids, because the parents would sometimes catch grasshoppers out in the fields, and you know, they'd pass by and they'd pull them off a grasshopper because it's protein to their kids so they wouldn't starve. They told the kid, if you rat out your parent, we will give you a feast. They literally psychologically set the family members against each other to destroy each other, to just shred the fibers that hold family and church together.
I did see some of that during COVID where they're asking people to rat other people out. But
Yeah,
how did they take over the teachers union? That's what I'd like to know.
I am not sure exactly how they took over the teachers union, but my guess is they did it the same way they're taking over America right now, which is they're indoctrinating you first with false data. Hey, communism's great. You know, it's going to make you equal and happy. Not telling you that it's the worst thing ever, right? And then the youth get all excited, or the young adults get all excited, and they take these Marxists that nobody knows are Marxists because they're not saying, you know, with the scarlet letter on them, I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist. And then they just run them into the board positions. They just elect them into positions of control at your school board, at your union, at your this, at your that. And as well, they play on the Democrat, you know, working class, you know, sympathy vote, which is you're oppressed, you don't have the same privileges because you're the wrong color, you're the wrong sex, you're the wrong whatever. So join the union and we're going to fight for your rights. And all of the people, women, minorities who've been oppressed are like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm tired of making 70% of what the men do. I'm tired of the glass ceiling. I'm tired of it too. Like I'm not Black, but I am a chick. I did walk into a major law firm after skipping high school. So I was younger by 4 years than all the other people starting in the law firm, to find my bra hanging from a chandelier in a Fortune 100 law firm. We served the biggest corporations on the planet. This was not a $2 chuck kind of place, right? Like we are representing Advana Bank, St. Louis Rams, Caterpillar franchises, like, you know, William Lyon, like we represented big companies, right? And I've got my bra hanging from a ceiling with a dollar bill and my boss's business card attached to it in the elevator lobby of a high rise in Newport Beach in mid 1990s, 95, 96.
Oh, wow.
So I know what it's like, even though I'm not Black or brown, to experience sexual discrimination, gender disparities in pay, glass ceilings. And if you've heard my mouth, you know I speak out on behalf of injustice. But I am here to tell you, if you're voting Democrat right now, the Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of old. It is not Bobby Kennedy's parents' party. It is now the Communist Party of America, and people need to start saying
it was the Democrats in Colorado here passing and the nationwide passing all kinds of things to help you and to lock you down. So I also want to ask you about your website. It says you're saying the Marxist and communist agendas dominating psychiatry while perverting the mental health laws to gain coercive control of the population. And I'm just wondering what does that look like so we can recognize it?
Yeah, well, it looks like, I'm sure, what you talk about a lot on here, which is, pharma being its own untouchable giant in the world right now. I mean, they're spending trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, depends on the year, on advertising. None of that is spent on safety trials usually. They're untouchable when it comes to vaccines, courtesy of the 1986 law. I'm not a huge fan of lawyers, despite the fact I am one, but there's a time and a place for us when we can sue an out-of-line company and economically break their back when a jury of 12 goes, yeah, Aaron Brockovich style, you were polluting groundwater and you shouldn't have been. That financial harm to the company from the fact that they did harm to the people causes a natural correction in the corporate ethos, as it should. They're like, we can't afford to have exploding engines in the rear of Pintos. We need to, do something right with our engine placement on our cars if we're Ford GM or whatever. There is a time and a place for class action lawsuits, for big lawsuits, and there is a time and a place for $1 million or $1 billion hits against these companies. If they're not going to course correct by listening to their own moral compass, you're going to force them to do that with the dollar. And when you protect a company from ever being sued, what you do is just you say, you've got a green light to put any drug on the market that you are now immune from being sued for, and you have zero incentive to do patient safety trials or safety data studies or anything, because you kill 1 million people, it doesn't matter, they can't sue you. You're never, ever, ever going to take a loss for that. So they put Vioxx on the market. It starts making people's kidneys and liver fall out of their, south end of their body. And the lawyers get a hold of that and they're like, Vioxx is really bad. Yeah, it takes your pain away, but you're going to die after you take it or darn near it. Wow, that lawsuit, yeah, all of a sudden Vioxx ain't on the market anymore. But when you can't sue, which is what you can't do right now with the kiddie vaccines anyway, you just have an out of control freightliner headed downhill, taking all of us with it. And when you drug a population, all of these drugs typically have side effects. Most of those side effects involve brain function, which is very much not talked about. It makes your brain not work well. Well, guess what? As human beings, we are already hardwired to be overly obedient to bad authority figures. If you don't know this, go Google Stanley Milgram trials. Yale University professor, 1961, put a bunch of people in a room, said he was studying their memory. They're supposed to memorize words, pairs of words. And he separates them, puts them in 2 different rooms. I tell Diana cat, and she's supposed to go, oh yeah, I memorized that the word that I'm supposed to say back to her when she tells me cat is doorknob. When Diana gets it wrong, I'm supposed to flip a switch on the wall that gives her an electric shock to negatively reinforce the fact that her brain misfired and didn't get the question right. At some point, I start off at 9 volts. For every question she gets wrong, it goes up a few volts until it ends at 450 volts. If I were actually nuking Diana with 450 volts right now, if you don't know anything about science, that is an electric chair dose. So that is the study parameters. And at some point, the person who's being asked to flip the switch to negatively reinforce wrong answers on the part of the other study participant is hearing pre-recorded sounds of pain from the other room. Nobody's actually being tortured. I don't know that. I assume they are. I'm hearing Diana screaming for her life, and they're going, it really hurt when you started, but now it's really bad. My heart's skipping beats, and if you keep this up, I'm going to die. I had a heart attack last year. I'm going to have another one. I'm going to die. And the person in my position, average dude, auto worker, postal worker, teacher at the university, kid who's 22 years old and about to graduate or just did, homemaker, turns to the study lead, the experiment doctor, who's in his white lab coat with a very stiff lapel and is named Dr. So-and-so and his little clipboard and his stethoscope. And the person in the study is like, yo, dude, I am not okay continuing to shock my neighbor in there. They're in pain. I didn't sign up for this. This was a memory study, you told me, not like a sadism study. And the doctor had been coached by Stanley Milgram to just do a tiny bit of verbal coercion and say, you got to continue. You must continue. And all of Stanley Milgram, all of his fellow professors in the psych department, when he described what the study was going to entail, were like, dude, you're high. None of these people who are average law-abiding Americans who go to church on Sunday, have 2 or 3 kids, white picket fence, normal jobs, don't even have a speeding ticket on the record. None of these guys are going to deliver a 450-volt jolt that would kill the other person if it were actually occurring in real life, just because your guy told them they had to. And when he did the study, 2 out of 3 Americans, 65.5%, despite protesting, were perfectly fine continuing to nuke their neighbor until it would have killed them if it had actually been happening in real life. That was in 1961. That is how Hitler got people to bow down and bake their neighbors who were Jewish in an oven. We are hardwired to be obedient because in primal, Cro-Magnon era times, your tribal leader said, run away from the rabid tiger. It saved your life to follow his orders. In Hitler's time, right now with pharma, we're not doing ourselves any favor. So when you dumb a population down, when you play on their fear, which gives them tunnel vision, people get in fear, they don't critically think anymore. It takes all of your frontal lobe of your brain offline. So you are literally just like, you're id. You're not your super ego anymore in Freud terms, right? You are not thinking things critically. You're just running from whatever sounds are
I think
occurring.
the 5G as well. I mean, 5G is also confusing.
Yeah, you're getting EMF baked by your Wi-Fi, by your Siri, by our cell phones that are on our bodies half the time, although they shouldn't be. You should put it in a Faraday cage, turn it off at night, take your Wi-Fi completely out of existence. You should not have a smart meter, whole separate conversation.
Yes.
I'm
if saying and then also the chemicals from like chemtrails and
right?
chemicals in the water, and fluoride actually too is a neurotoxin too.
Fluoride and mercury, and they're putting both of those things in your kids' teeth. You're doing it daily. They're putting it in your water. You're drinking your water. Your brain is not functioning at 100%.
I agree.
Even if you're Amish right now, because there's still chemtrailing above your head and the air quality and the water quality, even if you've got a well.
Yes.
So we need to detox, but the combination of dumbing people down using toxins and drugs and vaccines.
And society.
It's
full training. Like how many, I hate to say it, but we're listening to bells on the phone, very much like the Pavlovian dog.
Oh yeah.
And schools too. I mean, like I volunteered there, and every half an hour the bell would ring and we would get up and do something else.
Yeah. Just like Pavlov's dogs. So we are not raising a critically thinking society, and Rockefeller didn't want that. They wanted a working class that didn't stand up for themselves, that didn't think for themselves, and that would be paid slaves instead of slaves, because slaves get unhappy in the revolt, but paid slaves that are dumb, sit and eat bonbons and drink soda and watch CNN every night and just say, monkey see, monkey do, yes, sir, no, ma'am, we'll do what you're saying. And they get richer while the poor get poorer, and the poor don't even notice because they're too brain fogged to figure it out. So against that backdrop, now you've got an overt, it's no longer covert, taking over of our school systems, our boards. We have open communists who are running for office. We were electing in California DAs who were the children of Weather Underground, which was an actual communist thing in the 60s and 70s. His dad and mom went away for, I don't know, 80 years for robbing a bank as part of this communist group. And he was raised by other members of the group. He was an actual avowed communist, and they put him in as the DA of San Francisco. And then he was so radical that even the Pelosi's of the world up there were like, yeah, this soft on crime thing is kind of backfiring, because now all the Venezuelan gangs are holding us up in our own nice houses in San Francisco, and the pigeons were coming home to roost. You don't really want a lawless society. And if you need to teach your kid before they're in college that fact, you should have them take my course, or just go to Cambodia instead of the Cayman Islands this summer. Walk around through the places I live and work in when I'm over there, and your kid, like my kid at age 8, when a woman in a canoe tried to sell her baby to my family. My daughter was 8 years old. She goes, Mama, did that lady just try to sell her 1-year-old to you? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, why? I'm like, because the baby's going to starve if she did. And she's like, how did that happen? I'm like, it's called communism, and we're going to go to the killing fields tomorrow. And I literally dragged my daughter. You guys should get the book if you don't have the book.
I was going to say, yeah, let's talk about your book. And you said that child trafficking, yeah, please do show it. Child trafficking is actually a threat in our local society, even in affluent areas, even in like it's pretty affluent here in Colorado.
Yeah.
But You said it's a threat for everybody, so that makes it a local and personal problem. Maybe you could talk about that and your book.
Yeah. So really quickly, human slavery is 150 billion with a B dollar a year industry, untaxed because they're criminals, right? They're not paying taxes. And 40 million, 40 million people are currently enslaved, which is about the population of California. 89 to 90% of those enslaved are female and engaged in some sort of act of sexual servitude, which is to say, even if they're slave labor locked in a factory, making Nikes for you somewhere, or picking strawberries in the middle of California and getting paid 5 cents a day illegally, they're still usually being forced to turn tricks for their big boss at the end of the night. So maybe they're being labor trafficked, but there's usually some sort of sex trafficking overtone as well, even if they're not locked in a brothel in Thailand somewhere like where I work. And that is a heck of a problem. So if I do the math for you, and then depending on what continent you're on,
You're saying they're in the US too. I'm really
yeah,
surprised.
so in the US, it's a huge problem. But in places like the dark parts of Africa and Asia, almost 100% of those involved in human trafficking are trafficking kids. So they're mainly girls, they're mainly kids, and they're mainly being raped 8, 9, 10, 20 times a night for profit. It is a rape for profit industry. So it would be like everybody in California waking up, handcuffed to a bed, being raped 10 times a night until we die. How often do we die here in America? According to the FBI, a study they did probably almost 20 years ago now, the average age at which girls and boys are turned out the first time, i.e. forced to perform a sexual favor for money for the pimp, is 11 to 12, depending on the age and the city.
Wow.
And the average life expectancy after that child is first turned out is about 7 years. So I'm not great at math, but if you add 7 and 12 or 7 and 11, you get 18 or 19. These kids are dead or dying by the time they can legally vote. Death by John, death by pimp, death by STD. You've got a John who likes to strangle because that's how he gets off. He does it 1 minute too long, girl dies of asphyxiation. You get a pimp who didn't like the fact the girl was crying and saying no and trying to run away. He beats her too hard, too fast, she's dead, bam, you're done. Or she just contracts AIDS because nobody wants to actually use condoms when they're paying to rape children. And she gets AIDS and she dies a few years later and she is now dead before she can vote. That is the ugly reality of sex trafficking in America. The other thing that happens is women like you and me who are listening to the podcast right now are going, oh my gosh, that is so sad that that happens in places like Thailand. By the way, this is my
Back a
daughter.
little bit toward your face, would you? I can't see it clearly. Great.
There. Yeah. So there is a picture of my daughter and me. My daughter comes up to about my rib cage, standing in front of this building. This building is at the end of the killing fields. Inside this building, I did not know this when my daughter ran over to it, are a bunch of skulls. They have them segregated by age and by sex. It is the Cambodians' attempt to never forget, and that's what it says on the sign when they translate it into English, to never forget what happened at the hands of the communists. So every year when the rains come, it washes away the sandy, silty red soil. And even though it's been 50 years since the Cambodian overthrow under Pol Pot, where they executed part of the Cambodian population, telling them it was all going to be better, but just kidding, because communists actually kill you. That's what they do. They say it's going to be great, and then they kill you. Every year when the rains come, the bones will still to this day rise to the top, and they will preserve them in this glass case for visitors to see what communism does. So my daughter saw a lady try to sell her baby to us, and then she saw skulls in that glass case. I didn't know that that glass case was there. She looked at me and she said, again, Mama, how did this happen? And I said, I knelt down, I dragged her face to mine, and I said, those in power lied to the people. And by the time they figured it out, it was too damn late. Let this be a lesson to you, my love. Don't you ever agree or listen to somebody in a position of power simply because they are in power. If anything, your default baseline is you distrust what they say precisely because they are in power, even if you're here in America, but especially if you're living in a third world country. Do you hear me? And she said yes. And my child not only did not need therapy, my husband and I were pretty sure after her trip she was going to need therapy, never needed an inch of therapy. She is at a UC school where it is liberal crazier than get out. And she has converted 2 of her friends to Christianity, just got back from a mission trip with a mission group from that school. And when people come up and they're like, are you pro-Gaza and will you come out and do tents in the quad? She's like, you are crazy. You need to go research actual communism and see what you're getting into. So the answer to preventing our children from falling into this communist sort of economic and school system that is being thrust at them from every way is to protect their learning, put them in a Christian school, homeschool them, don't send them to a crazy school, or to give them my course, because I go over this in my course, or have them read my book. But the other thing you need to know is sex trafficking is integrally tied to these third world economies because the people are so poor. And it's also happening here. And it's not just happening on the wrong side of the tracks. So what I started to say before I went off on that tangent is women like us are listening with one ear closed because they're going, that's so sad.
You think it doesn't happen here? Yeah, but you said
yeah,
it does.
it's so sad that it happens when Leigh goes to Thailand. I am here to tell you, it happens to your child and my child. Rich white kids with 4.5 GPAs in honors calculus and world history being recruited by every D1 team in their volleyball, basketball, whatever sport they're in. And I have personally been part of an organization that rescued girls who were being trafficked under their parents' noses, because these pimps who are 25 will enroll themselves in your very nice high school in the nice part of town, and they will target girls who are feeling unself-confident. And that is pretty much every child at some point. They had a bad day. And the guy is nice and he looks like her. He doesn't look like a skeezy, sleazy 80-year-old perv. He looks like he's her age, even though he's a little older, and he's a pimp, and he's very polite and he's very well spoken. And they start dating and he introduces himself to the parents and he has a nice firm handshake and he makes eye contact with Mr. and Mrs. Jones and he says, oh, she's got a 10 o'clock curfew. Absolutely. I'll have her back at 9:59. We're going to pizza and bowling. And darn it, if he doesn't have her back at 9:58 and you and your husband are going, what a nice boy. We wouldn't mind if they actually kept dating through college and got married. And 4 months into it, when they are firmly in love and everything's been great and he's met the family and the parents like him, he says to the girl one time, you remember when I told you my parents fell on hard times, baby, a year ago and they couldn't afford their rent, their mortgage? And your girl goes, yeah, I remember. And he goes, yeah, well, my buddy gave us a loan so that my parents could, keep their place. And now it's time to pay him back, but we still don't have the money, but he really likes you, sweetie. And, he said, if you just get with him, he'll erase the debt. He'll forgive the debt, which would be great because my family and I can't afford to pay it back. And the girl does what you would expect your daughter to do. She goes, I'm in love with you, sweetheart, and I'm a virgin, and no, I'm not going to just get with your friend. I mean, I feel bad for you, but no, My daddy's a pastor. My mommy's a lawyer. Telling you a true story that's very similar right now. And from a very high net worth area out here in Altadena, Pasadena area. And no,
Wow.
I'm not,
Wow.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And the guy works on her and he works on her and he works on her and he works on her. And
Don't you
finally
love
she's like,
me? Don't you love me?
don't you
I
let
don't have to
me,
break up with you.
and so she says yes. She goes, fine, just this one time. And the girl, your daughter, goes on a date with her boyfriend's buddy. Unbeknownst to her, they are taking photos and video recording that interaction. So the next night, when he drops her off at the living room at 9:58, he goes, so I'm going to be back at midnight after your parents are in bed. You're going to climb out your window and I'm going to put you in the back of my car and I'm going to sell you to 5 of my friends tonight for money. And she's like, the hell you say? What are you talking about? What kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing is going on right now?
But she's
And he's
coerced
like,
into it because of the video.
yeah, exactly. It's called sextortion. And she goes, no. And he goes, yeah, because I've got rolling video of what you did last night. And if you don't do it, I'm going to send it to your daddy's church where he's a lay pastor or the pastor. And I'm going to send it all around high school. And you will be the laughing stock of everything. And you won't have a career. And you'll never get recruited by Stanford to be on their basketball team and be your full ride scholarship. And she's scared. And her frontal lobe is not fully developed until 25. And she's being extorted. And even adults
By a
can't resist.
by a professional who's older.
Who
And
thinks, yeah, who says he's 16, but he's really 25 and he's got 10 other girls he's doing it to. And they're all rich white girls. And she drops 30 pounds and you're wondering if she's got a coke or a meth habit. And all her friends are wondering if she's got an eating disorder. And her grades went from straight A and 4.5 GPA to D's and F's. And you're really thinking it's a drug issue or an eating disorder. No, she is being trafficked every darn night under your nose from 12 to 4 and getting no sleep. And that's why she's dropping weight and chewing her fingernails to the stub. And yes, it does happen in your town. Yes, there are no brothels in your town. It is called the Hyatt, the Marriott. and the Super 8 and the Motel 6.
How do we
Or
see this? How do we see this? How do we stop it? Is it in your book? I mean, any tips?
yeah, so I talk about it in my online course, which is called The Psychology of the Winner. And you can go to my website, leighdundas.com, leighdundas.com, and you can sign up for the course. It's a 20-hour online course. You can take it from anywhere in the world. It's only $99. If you want your kid to get credit, it actually counts as a Psychology 101 class. They can actually get credit for it, and it transfers to their college, or homeschooling credit for it. But if you just need the data and you're a soccer mom like us and you just want to take it, audit it for $99, just take the course. And I unbrainwash our youth. I go through actual history. I go through my family's history. Roma, we were from Romania, Hungary. We have our own little problem we had our own Holocaust under Hitler, the Roma Holocaust. It was like the Jewish one, not as well known. Communism came for us 20 years prior to that, in 19-teens, 1920s. That's how my grandparents got out, came over here. So I go through personal stories, both in my book and the course, because nobody wants to learn history by hearing facts and figures, not anybody. People learn by storytelling, and you make it real and they never forget. And then we talk about sex trafficking in ways that your kids can understand and aren't too scary. And then we talk about how to fight tyranny in your town. Okay, when I got into Yale Law School at age 17, after skipping high school and going to college in 3 years and graduating, there was no course that says, hey, when your government 40 years from now starts rolling like the commies in Asia, and courtrooms and lawsuits and legislation isn't working worth a darn anymore because we're a lost cause in the blue states anyway, do a convoy. They're not teaching you in law school how to do a convoy or how to make a TV ad with a Holocaust survivor to get rid of vaccine passports like I did. That was just something I figured out on the fly, in part because I learned from the Thai people who have coup d'etats every 6 years. So I watched them encircle Bangkok International Airport with their tractors and bring their government to its knees by stopping air travel, including supply chain, right? So yeah, I took notes when I was in Asia. Never thought I would actually need those notes, but timing is everything. And here we are, and we're running convoys like they do in third world countries. And you know what? They work. More than half of our states, all of the blue states, were still hard lockdown January, early February of 2022. I announced that trucker convoy February 4th on my own Facebook. Flynn and Lynn and Simone and Bobby Kennedy and everybody who was anybody announced that. And over the weekend, the White House started leaning on all the blue state governors. They were like, we do not want an Occupy Ottawa problem like Trudeau has on his side of the border in DC. You open the heck up. During Biden's State of the Union in early March, he wants to be able to take the microphone and say he's the victor over COVID. Yeah. So literally, if you are curious right now, you can Google when all the blue states opened up. They felt like dominoes in a row, and everybody's like, oh, that was just amazing. I'm like, that wasn't amazing. That was the threat of a trucker convoy. We hadn't even left. We didn't leave until like February 20 something, and half the states were already reopened by that point. But you never make a promise or a threat that you don't keep. So once you say you're going to do a convoy, you do it, even if the dial's already moving in your favor before you launch it. And parents and our youth, especially, who are going to be on this planet longer, they need to know how to do the power of the people moves, the nationwide boycotts, these convoys. They need to know how to name and shame their health officer out of that position, their school board officer out of that position, without filing a lawsuit that doesn't work and wastes 200 grand and takes 2 years to lose. You can literally find the bad plan, find the person pushing the bad plan, hire a PI to go look in their closet, find anything they've ever done that's illegal, unethical, or makes the average person go, oh my gosh, they did what? And you just put it on blast. You can't blackmail them. That's illegal. You'll go to jail. You can't go up and go, I found all the skeletons in your closet unless you do what I say.
Blackmail's illegal, but you can do it, let it go publicly, and then
you just put it on blast at your board meeting. You just hold a protest in front of their house if it's not illegal to do that, or their place of work or whatever. Just do a Facebook rant, let it go public, let your friends, the normal citizens push back. And that guy, nobody likes having their wrongdoing exposed. Even us law-abiding folks are like, yeah, I really don't want anybody to know that I was going 79 miles an hour when I got that ticket. Like, ideally, you're going to find something a little bit juicier than that to out them with. But let me tell you, they don't like it when the public hits back, and they immediately course correct. And oftentimes they resign themselves from the position. And
that's how I got to know you, because you were speaking at the school board, and of course you only have like 3 or 4 minutes, so you were speaking very fast. And I was like, yes, this lady, yes. I'm like, yes, because right here in Colorado we have also a unelected, appointed health officer who was making all kinds of decisions for us and also recommending things to the neighboring counties. And it's like, I didn't elect you and I don't believe in what you're saying. I don't believe it's true. And et cetera. So talk about your book talks about the plan, about how to get.
I talk more about the plan. I talk a little bit about the plan in the book. A lot of the book's about sex trafficking. A lot of it is about tools we can use to just stand up. That's why it's called Just Stand Up, My Fight for Freedom, from the brothels of Asia to the streets of America. So if you want to learn more about those topics, you can get it on my website. Amazon's out of print right now on it. It's leighdundas.com, and you just go to the book tab. But the course really walks you through, like, if you're Diana and you got this out of control tyrant in a position of power in your town, and Leigh Dundas doesn't live in your town, you can do it. I mean, this is, go to Walmart, buy a bullhorn, get your fellow soccer moms all fired up to do the same, go to Kinko's, make some signs, and find somebody who's articulate to grab the mic or the bullhorn and tell a cohesive, coherent story that scares your tyrant back into doing good stuff instead of bad stuff. And I teach you how to do it like a Betty Crocker cookie recipe in the course, which again is the education tab of my website, leighdundas.com. But yeah, that is how we fight back. And it's one of the big things that I am on fire to sort of teach folks how to do, because it restores the ability to win easily and without a lot of money and quickly to the people who need it, which are the average good citizens. 80% of the people on this planet are good-hearted people. There's way more of us than them. We can win this if we just have the right tools and the right spiritual approach, and the fact that we know we can if we harvest and harness the neuroscience behind it. Like, there is a reason, guys, the San Antonio Spurs win the games they win. And I know the basketball games are a little bit rigged, but there are certain coaches that get outlier results out of their classes, out of their sports team. Same thing with, it wasn't Just Stand Up. It was like Lean on Me. There was that East LA teacher teaching in Compton, and he got like all of his math students. The movie came out like 30 years ago, but he got all of his East LA Compton math students who couldn't even like read, doing calculus level work. And then when they took a standardized test at the end of the year, the SATs, they literally made them retest because they thought, no way could all of these minority kids.
Cheated. Yeah,
they thought they cheated. That teacher is a 1 in a million teacher. He is doing something qualitatively different than every other teacher in that school, in that county, in that state. We need to know what he's doing so that we can do it too, so that our kids can be winners, so they can go be the 1% of the 1%. And there is a neuroscience behind the art and the talent and the science of winning. And that's what I go on into, as well as unbrainwashing our youth and then giving you the playbook. I'm like, hey, there's little life hacks you can do that make you a winner. And they're cheap and they're easy, and they involve like 60 seconds while you're in the shower. Anybody can do it while you're brushing your teeth in the shower, and you should know. Feed your kid an egg a day. They're way higher on their IQ at the end of the year. Tell your kid they can succeed. Again, they will be performing grade levels above where they are if you just tell them that every day, or the teacher does. They drowned rats in a study, and the rats, they figured out, when you put them in a barrel of water, drown pretty quickly. It's about 15 minutes. That's all the further they swim before they're like, oh, we're done. And then the scientist who was doing the study was like, that seems kind of like not good enough. Like, we heard about rats in Christopher Columbus's time jumping off of ships and swimming for islands. And like, how the heck did the rat swim to an island if he can't swim longer than 15 minutes? This does not make any sense. So he ended up doing a study on reinforcing the notion of rescue. And so he redid the study where he put the rats in the water, waited until they were about to drown, pulled the rats out of the water, and then dusted off their little heads and literally talked positively to them. He was like, hey guys, you can do it. You got this. And it reinforced in the rat's brain, oh yeah, there are caretakers in this lab that I'm living in who not just feed me twice a week or twice a day, but they might rescue me. They're humans. They can actually come like God and rescue me from these awful living conditions. So as soon as he had reinforced the notion of hope of rescue in the rat's brain, then he put him back into the drink, where you could have been honestly forgiven for your thought that they're probably going to drown even quicker because they just swam to full muscle failure like 1 minute ago. And instead of drowning right away because they were already tired and have run a marathon, right? And instead of just swimming another 15 minutes, which in and of itself would have been pretty impressive, those rats did not just swim for another 15 minutes after they had already been ready to give up the ghost a second ago. After he positively reinforced the notion of rescue for a few seconds and threw him back in, they swam for 3 days. 3 days.
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa.
That is the power of hope and expectation. Your job is to keep your mind right. Nobody wins a war thinking like Eeyore, oh, I'll give it a whirl, but I don't think it's going to work. You can't afford, as the parent in your child's life, to be having that mindset. You can't afford for yourself to have that mindset. As a teacher, as an influencer, you have got to understand the life hacks for getting you feeling like that rat did on round 2, like you can swim as long as you need to get to victory. And that is what I teach in the class. leighdundas.com, click the education tab. And I'd love to talk about some health stuff for the last 5 or 10 minutes we got here.
Yes, were telling me about water, and your website talks about, I'm not sure if it was your website or the text you sent me. You tell us. You tell us.
Yeah, so there's this amazing water. It is unlike all the other water you've heard about before. So a lot of people know about Kangen or alkaline or the pH water. This is different. This is high oxygen content water. The water is simply the delivery vehicle to get it into your body. So everybody pretty much understands oxygen is good for our body, and diseases, autoimmune, brain injuries, cancers thrive in a hypoxic or a low oxygen environment. So if you want to see your cancer go into overdrive, wear 5 masks and live in a low oxygen environment, and go up in a space shuttle. You literally, the cancer will be like, yeah, there's no oxygen here, I'm going to take off. You can just Google it right now. Does cancer thrive in low oxygen environments? And you'll see
It's not structured water. I wanted to know what it was really, because there's a lot of talk about water and stuff right now.
Yeah, so it's a water that has been altered to leave a higher oxygen content molecularly in the water than exists in normal water, Fiji, Evian, tap water, normal water. So it is literally oxygen heavy. It's high oxygen. We are white labeling it for the Patriot crowd. It is called Patriox, oxygen water for patriots. You can get it on my website, leighdundas.com, healthy living tab. And I'll throw it up now on the screen. You can just sort of see the healthy living tabbing here. You go down, you click buy Patriox water. But I want to tell you what they're seeing in Europe with this water. So here, I'm going to put up on the screen right now. There's some, this is a 60-year-old woman's blood, and you're looking at the blood being all clumpy. So they took a sample of her blood right before she drank the water. And you don't want clumpy blood. You don't want your blood to look like a bunch of high school girls gaggled up in groups at passing period, in 10th grade.
It's
That's
sticky,
not,
basically lectin sticky, right?
yeah, exactly.
Clotting.
Yeah, you don't want it clotty, you don't want it clumpy, you don't want all your little cells like here and there and little islands. Nuh-uh. You want, I hate to say this word, you want your cells on a slide to look like they're socially distanced. You want them all nicely dispersed away from the other ones, right? So this is the woman, 60 years old, in Europe, before she drank the water. Obviously, the blood is not looking so good on this first slide. It's all clumped up together. I'm going to put up now the second slide. Check that out. Can you see how it's all nicely dispersed there, Diana? Isn't that a thing of beauty?
Yes.
Yeah, it is crazy cool. So literally, this is 2 minutes after she drank her water. The second slide, the blood has responded that quickly. 64-year-old, same thing. Clumpy blood before, different woman, same problem, clumpy blood. 2 minutes later, again, the blood is looking
And
beautiful.
what's the effect of this? Like, what's the effect after this? Like, I mean, it's fine if you're looking under the microscope, but what does it feel like? Do you feel like you're more energized? I mean,
When
certainly you could use that.
when I drink it, I feel simultaneously more energized, more calm, more clear-headed, less brain fog, and just like I did when I was a kid. Like I'm just focused and just, I'm not dispersed. I'm
Normal.
not overwhelmed with all the interruptions and the cell phone beeping. Like, even though that's still going on, I'm just centered, rock solid, moving at the speed of light, getting my stuff done, which is a challenge for me because I had a brain injury 10 years ago, pretty severe, 2 50-mile-an-hour cars hitting head on because a woman basically came over the center divider into my lane where I was going 50, the speed limit. She was
Wow.
going 50, and we had no
Wow, wow.
notice. We plowed into each other. Airbag came out, hit my head. Seatbelt locked late, so my head was right here when the airbag hit. Airbags come out faster than Mike Tyson's hardest punch. And apparently when you sustain a brain injury, it's better to do it front on, because if you're sideways, and I was cringing at her coming at me, it causes shearing forces, which is, your brain is, I thought your brain was a hard thing. Your brain is the consistency of stiff jello, and you've got all these
It's
potent
inside the
parts.
skull. Yeah.
And the bones inside your skull aren't smooth. They're very craggy. And so basically this very soft jello goes bouncing back and forth between your headboard or your back of your headrest and the airbag that deployed. And it was a nightmare. It hit my word finding center, which is all I use as a lawyer to speak and to write. And it hit my occiput in the back on the headrest, which controlled balance. So at the time I was training cops on how to not arrest the girls and arrest the pimps and the traffickers in human trafficking situations. And I would go to walk up to the podium and I would look drunk because I had no balance and I was wobbling in my heels. And then I was constantly searching for words. It took me a good year and a half of very serious recovery before I got back to looking and sounding semi-normal. But everybody knows you have a brain injury, go into hyperbaric chamber. I couldn't because I had a lung thing going on at the time. But I looked into hyperbaric and I wanted to do it. And a lot of people who have kids on the spectrum, people who have cancer, people who have other disease issues, what do? They go in hyperbaric. Here's the problem with hyperbaric. It costs at the low end in my city, $225 per session, up to over $400, which nobody can afford these days. And insurance doesn't cover it. You got to zip yourself into a little tiny claustrophobic unit. You got a kid who's ADD, who's on the spectrum. Even adults who are calm don't want to go in a hyperbaric chamber. It's not exactly fun. And it's pricey and it wears off like an hour later. This is.
It does. I'm surprised you're drinking that out of a plastic cup, though. Is it glass?
I'm not because my water is en route. So the water literally, we're opening a bottling plant because right now it's being bottled in Hungary and it's pricey and it takes a long time to ship from Hungary. So my colleagues are opening a bottling plant in Florida. It should be online later this year. It'll drop the price considerably and it will ship much faster. We had run out of water and then the slow boat from Hungary hit a storm in the Atlantic, but it finally just arrived literally a week ago. Now we're selling the pallet. It comes to you like an Evian or Fiji bottle. I usually drink out of glass. I was late to my own podcast today with you, so I grabbed the first thing available. It was a plastic cup. But it does have good things. It says do awesome stuff on it. Anyway, so at least it's saying good things to the water inside the cup. But yeah, it feels amazing. And better yet, it has miraculous results. So you can see the next slide is old guy. He's got some sort of weird dark spot right here on his temple.
I think it was a mole. I think if I remember from your text, it was a mole.
Like a mole, dark wart
huge.
It was big.
It shrank on its own after using. Did he drink it or did he put it on the side of his head?
I believe he just drank it, but they do immersion, and we're going to be doing that too. So for the really sick people who have cancers, and again, the FDA doesn't want to hear it. I'm not making claims. I'm not a doctor. I am simply telling you anecdotally the results they're getting in Hungary. When they get people into the clinic in Hungary who have autoimmune, who have cancers, who have 14-year-old nonverbal autistic kids who've never spoken a word, these people are immersed in a bath of this water for an hour a day, and they're drinking the water, and they're only drinking the water. They're not just supplementing with the water. They're nonstop drinking the water, and they're in the water an hour a day. And these people are having nothing short of miraculous results. Again, results vary, but I am telling you, the reason I know about the water is my two friends who are bringing it to America had cancer. They didn't do the Western med thing, and they walked out fine. And they met a gajillion other people over there. Okay, not a gajillion, but you get the idea. Same boat, had cancer, walked out, no longer had cancer. But the most amazing one I want to show you next is a woman who in Europe had cut her thumb. She'd, I don't know, run it through a saw or something. And it literally took off the thumb on the diagonal across her nail bed over the joint. So this is the before picture. You can see it's kind of gory. Here's your gory warning. Going to put the before picture up. You can see pretty much half her thumb is missing on the diagonal. She goes to the University of Milan in Italy, and she's like, yeah, something bad happened. And they're like, ew, yeah, that doesn't look so hot. And they added this water in gel form, because then it doesn't evaporate as quickly, to her bandage, thinking it would help speed the healing. And instead, when they unwrapped the bandage, her thumb had regrown, as you can see from the after shot now.
And I just want to say, I feel like it's just like she's got the edge of it taken off, but still, I mean, I'm not sure that would regrow normally, because like I can see it's into the nail. It's like a good 1/8 or 1/4 inch on the side of the thumb.
Yeah.
When you see the after picture, I mean, I'm really amazed there's no scar on there.
There's no scar.
My brother, one of my relatives cut his thumb with a table saw, And I thought it had a scar left over, and I'm surprised it looks like normal. It looks
Skin.
normal.
Yeah, I mean, if you zoom in on this photo here, the after,
No, it
you
doesn't look
can't
like
even
there's any
see where
scar.
the, no, it doesn't, there's no
Not
scar.
like a red line.
Now, and so what they discovered, the University of Milan was like shocked as heck, like we all are, because we all learn in third grade during science class with Mrs. Jones. She's like, okay, people, if you lose a limb, it's gone forever because we're not starfish. Starfish, you pull off a limb, it'll regrow slowly over time, but human beings aren't starfish. This isn't Star Trek. This isn't sci-fi. So if you cut your foot off in your dad's table saw, be careful, little Johnny, because it won't regrow. Like that is doctrinal science that we have all been brainwashed with because it
Right.
was the truth up until University of Milan put this gel on. And there's another slide I'm going to show you right now. Literally, you can see this geneticist guy, and he's talking about how, and they've run it by some Nobel Prize candidate winners. They've run it by geneticists. All these guys are like, wow, at the molecular level, this is crazy insane. University of Milan said what it did is it reactivated a gene in this woman's body that is largely dormant once we're born, mainly active when we're in utero, because what are we doing in utero? We're growing limbs, but the high oxygen content caused this gene to spring back into doing stuff. That's how her thumb regenerated, basically, the tip of it that it did. I mean, just amazing. Like for me, when I'm talking to my friends, they're like, yeah, if it can do that for the woman's thumb, imagine what it's doing inside all of us, right? Like, get me a case of the water, especially because we're going into election season and who knows what kind of, I mean, you know, and people are like, well, it's a little pricey. I'm like, well, it's no more pricey
Yeah.
than an 8-ounce Starbucks, which is killing you quickly, you know, or a
It's
shake
like
at
78
McDonald's.
for a liter and a half. 78, I'm sorry, 74 if you buy more. If you
74 for a
subscribe.
case. Yeah, a
Oh,
case
for a
of the
case.
big,
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry,
a case.
six
Yeah.
bottles. I forgive me. I
Yeah.
thought it was for one bottle, 6 bottles, but you said it would go down once the plants open in Florida. But how are you getting around things like the FDA? Because I know they don't really like alternative medicine. And I'm
Apparently,
wondering if you have to like off the continent, off the
so
boundaries.
apparently water is in the beverage category. It's not in the medicine category. So that's the short answer to that. As I understand it, I am not the on-point person in this company for that. They've sorted it with the regulatory bodies, but yeah, it's water. It just has a higher oxygen content. So there you go. But for me, it's a no-brainer. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have a case of this stuff because if the you know what hits the fan and we can't get medicines, not that I ever use medicines anyway, but like it's just a good cure-all to have. I mean, if you can get that kind of a result, throwing it in a Band-Aid before you have a wound, let alone drinking it, like why not? And yeah, so again, healthy living, click the buy Patriox button that you see here. I'll throw it up on the screen right now, leighdundas.com. And you can get a case or more than one case. I mean, it's totally up to you, but they've got a pallet right now
I'd be
between now and
interested
when
to
the
try it.
bottling
Yeah.
company. Yeah, I mean, why
Definitely be
not?
interested to try it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to give a shout out to really quickly is stem cell. Before I got infamous for grabbing bullhorns and screaming at blue state tyrants, I actually had a paying career. My husband is a physician, and for the last few years before COVID, half decade before COVID, we were doing human amniotic placental stem cell. So a lot of people are confused on the topic. They think, oh my gosh, that's like abortion. No, that's embryo derived stem cell, which is largely illegal. It's not commercially available in the US, nor should it be,
And
nor
it's
would,
like it feels immoral to me too.
oh, it totally does. Like let the poor baby, like, just no, right?
You had a
Just
different source from normal birth.
yeah. So the amnioplacental is totally separate from that. The way it works is we get pregnant, we have a baby. Nobody pays attention after the baby comes out because everybody's staring at how cute the baby is. But if you're a chick or a husband who was in the room with your wife, y'all know what happens next. The placenta comes out with the amniotic, or not the placenta, the amniotic lining comes out. The placenta comes out. Your uterus hopefully stays inside. Umbilical cord comes out. It's not like women walk around with all those things still inside of us. If we did, we'd die because they'd start getting infected. They're not kidneys and livers. You don't keep them forever. And the way they used to handle it in hospitals when these women would have C-sections is after that stuff came out of the woman, they would just throw it in the medical waste bin because it's medical waste. And then some bright guy decided, I wonder if that's high in stem cell. And lo and behold, It was. So they started harvesting it rather than just wasting this stuff. They started asking the women, they give the women informed consent. The women are not paid. It's only in certain university hospitals. And they say, hey, rather than having the amniotic lining and the placenta hit the trash can, would you be willing to donate that to science? The women are not compensated, so there's no weird incentive to do it. Hospital isn't compensated beyond its hard costs in doing the recovery of the material. And then it's sent to a lab, and the stem cells are captured from it, and they're put in little tiny vials that are about the size of the end of my finger. And that's stem cell, that's amniotic stem cell. And for those who don't know what a stem cell is, it's like a little blank slate. So when you tell your son or your daughter when they're 3 years old, hey, baby, you can be anything when you grow up. You could be a vet. I lost you for a second. That was so
Yeah,
weird.
we did. So is it the amniotic, it's the amniotic, sorry, the uterine lining as well?
No, it's taken from the amnion, the amniotic fluid, and the placenta. So that's sort of the place it's harvested from. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor, full disclosure. Y'all know me, I'm a lawyer, but this is my third grade understanding of it. And then it's, it's all sterile. There's no real blood product in there. And it's, the 1 cc is like the size of the end of my finger. And then they put it on a needle and it goes into the person's knee or muscle or blown tendon, blown ligament, bone on bone knee where the cartilage wore out and the little lady can't get up and down the stairs without it hurting and creaking. And it does miraculous stuff. We had patients who literally their knee bones were sitting on top of each other because the cushion, the cartilage is supposed to keep it separate and absorb shock when you're walking was worn out. They're 100 years old, that wore out. Or we treated an ex-NFL player that you'll hear from in a second here. And yeah, he just tore his body up. So by the time he was our age, his knees hurt. And we would do it. We would do the injections, and we never had a side effect. Our lab never had a side effect. As long as you keep a sterile field and the needle's clean, there's really no known side effects from the source that we had used. And 9 out of 10 times on average, it would take, and the patient would feel great. And I am talking, these are people who were scheduled for double knee replacement surgery. And they were literally telling their surgeon, I'm canceling my surgery. I'm throwing away my walker. And we would say afterward, we're like, look, you need to give it time to heal the boo-boo. If you're bone on bone and we want to see your bones separated in a couple months when we shoot another x-ray, don't go run an ultra marathon tomorrow just because you're feeling good. And literally it was like trying to cage a cat high on cocaine. We would tell the patients, you're going to start feeling better, take it easy for the first few days at least. And we would call to do a follow-up, and they'd be like, and I'd be like, where are you? And they're like, don't call me, I'll call you. I don't want the roaming charges. I'm like, we told you to take it easy. Clearly you're not at home in Phoenix. And they're like, no, I'm hiking Machu Picchu. I'm like, what part of take it easy is hiking Machu Picchu less than a week after we treated your knee that was bone on bone? So right now, I just want to play a couple different things. You're going to hear from Don. He was a tech company guy up in San Francisco, very skeptical. You can see he's a skeptical middle-aged guy. And he had all sorts of boo-boos, but he did his neck first. And the guy couldn't turn his neck at all. We get migraines. I'll let him tell his story. Here we go. I'm going to cue it up.
Yeah, for only 3 weeks, this is amazing. I could turn my head left to right without having a chiropractic adjustment before and after. Daily, sometimes multiple times a day, stress hot in the neck that would then lead to a headache and make me a kind of grumpy person. Grumpy Gus was a term used on one of my reviews, as I had to kind of like moderate myself and eat more aspirin. Since the shots, 0. This is amazing. I'm talking 20 years I've been dealing with this.
There he is telling you in his own words, he can turn his neck like an owl. So he calls us up after this and he goes, where are you going to be next week? I'm like, in Santa Barbara, not San Francisco. He goes, fine, I'm going to drive down. I want you to do my low back. The guy could not bend over and touch anything further south than his knees. He was very unlimber. He's like, oh, okay, I'm touching my knees. We shoot his low back. He can palm the floor. Literally the next day, palm the floor. So then he calls up and he's like, where are you next week? And I'm like, I don't know, Palm Springs. Because we were operating in 7 states and various cities at the time. And he goes, I'm bringing my wife. She's got rheumatoid and osteoarthritis. She likes to paint. She can't even hold a paintbrush anymore. And now I'm going to play the video of both of them. And you can hear from their own mouths the success they had. By the way, after this, they went and hiked the Great Wall of China because they didn't take it easy either. Here we go.
I've had several rounds now of shots. The first round was left sciatic and neck. Turned my head shoulder to shoulder ever since then. That was last March of 2017. And no headaches, off aspirin, off ice packing. Now I can touch my toes again without having to, I can get there in about 15 minutes and hold my breath. And no, I can just touch my toes anytime I want. And now I'm running away from Katie as she's getting more shots so that she can try to keep up with me a little bit better. I was the guinea pig. She says, well, you do it first and we'll see how it works out. And it's worked out really amazingly well. And I can't say how much of a life improvement it's made for me. I mean, I could go on for an hour. But
my tailbone stopped hurting. It's been hurting for a long, long time. I had no more migraines, and I've not had any since. And that alone,
yep, worth it.
like a miracle.
And so we're really thankful to Stem Cell and to Hirsch Medical. So thank you.
That's our life back.
Definitely.
Alrighty, so that is how it works. And yes, it even works on the NFL players. I'm going to give you one more. This poor guy, he's an ex-NFL player, bad knees, couldn't go up and down hills, couldn't hunt. He comes to one of our seminars just to say thank you for giving him his life back. All the old people in the room are like, hey, did he get it done? Can you put him on the microphone? And you can see, like, when you see the video right now, he's like a very like quiet old guy, doesn't know to hold the microphone close to his mouth. So it's really kind of hard to hear him. And the audience members are just like, were you bone on bone? Were you finding it hard to go? Like, he's literally getting cross-examined by my audience. And he was such a good sport about it. It's another 60-second video. Here we go.
No, I got tired of all the drugs. After playing college football, I was damaged goods then because they'd inject me full of cortisone all the time. And I lived on painkillers, uppers and downers to sleep. And then I played a little bit in the NFL, and it was the same thing. My career only lasted 2 games, and I was done.
How bad were your knees before you started this process?
First of all, they wanted to replace both of them for the past 10 years. Then they wanted to do nerve bypass surgeries. Then they wanted to put artificial ligaments in, and they cut a donut in there so the nerve could stick through the ligament. That's how bad.
You had bone on bone then?
Oh yeah.
No pain walking normally go upstairs like you said?
And you get going upstairs was easier, going downstairs was impossible. When I'd get out and do some outdoor, like hunting or something, have to walk up a hill, forget it. Those days, they were over a long time ago. But now I don't have any problem with that at all.
Thank you.
I wish I'd have known about it years ago. It sure changed. I can go back and do those things again. I could get in the old man's league and play basketball and do all that stuff, but I'm not going to because I like being pain-free and I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're back on. You guys have now seen and heard from the horse's mouths how well this works. We did little old ladies. We did ex-NFL players, everybody in between. Really quickly, Diana has a question for me, and then I want to tell you how you can get it hooked up. Go, Diana. What's your question?
That is the question, actually, because I see your website. It says stem cell therapy, but it says password protected. And I'm just wondering, there are doctors doing this, and can you just inject it in the body and it goes to the neck or the knee where it's needed, or do you just put it? So who's doing this, I guess?
So they're little blank slates, and they can grow up and they become anything that needs doing in the body. There's a racehorse where they did horse placenta amnio transplant. He'd blown a tendon in England. He had clipped his front tendon with his back hook. It was so bad on the racetrack, they put the screens up, which is usually a sign they're going to shoot the horse. That's how severe the injury was. His name is Dream Alliance. And if you Google Dream Alliance right now and the horse, here, I'll try to get a picture up. I'll throw up in a sec. But so the owners were like, no, we don't want to put him down. Like, let's try this novel stem cell therapy. Not only did it get the horse vertical, able to bear weight, walk around, and be put out to pasture again, which is usually the best you can hope for after a tendon severing, it grew the tendon apparently back together so darn well, they raced the horse into the winner's circle 18 months later. I mean, that is, I had a patient the other day who said, hey, if you're back doing this, I want to know how, so I'm going to tell you how to do it in a second. And he's like, I heard they could they're reversing quadriplegia with it. I go, oh yeah, well, we started doing this in 2016. And I went to Google the article to give it to him. And there's still the 2016 guy. It was a young kid, quad, and San Francisco Business Journal had highlighted him on the front page, and he's bench pressing weight, as you can see on the screen here. Like, again, we are told from the time we're 5 years old, you're a quadriplegic, you ain't moving anything below your neck ever again. Certainly not bench pressing heavy weight over your head. So I go to Google it literally 3 or 4 days ago to get this article to send to somebody who wanted to know more. And a new article comes up from April 1st of 2024. I think it was Mayo Clinic. You can see it on screen here. This guy, again, I think he was a full quad, and they've got him walking after stem cell therapy.
Wow.
So
So
it
they
is
just
really,
inject it in the neck and then it works?
I think they did spinal cord directly on the spinal cord. And that, full disclosure, that is not what my husband's business does. We are simply using it for orthopedic uses. But in the middle of 2022, during all the COVID crazy, or 21, originally the FDA was allowing us to do the orthopedic use amniotic stem cell under an experimental window they had open. So if the patient was fully informed and they consented and they wanted to try it and skip the joint surgery and try to get themselves better, they could. And then what was happening is we were doing such great work that the patients were never getting their $40,000 knee replacements or their $300,000 low back surgeries, and they weren't being addicted to pain pills. So pharma and the orthopods lobbied the FDA to close it down, as they so often do with stuff that actually works in America.
Yeah.
So the FDA basically was like, you can't do it anymore. So at that point, all of the people who wanted it were having to fly to Panama or Dubai or Hong Kong to get it done. And then God bless the state of Utah, because literally 2.5, 3 months ago, the state of Utah said, you know what? All of the rights that are not specifically set forth as being part of the federal government's rights are reserved to the states. We don't think when they made this rule constitutionally a couple hundred years ago that stem cell was around. We think healthcare is one of those things that we have some say-so in. And the state of Utah legislature passed a new law that specifically allows human amniotic placental umbilical cord stem cell for orthopedic uses. That's actually what it says in the law. And I would say if you want to get this done or you're remotely interested, make hay while the sun is shining, because you never know what kind of crazy is going to go on in America. But in the state of Utah, we have a green light. Our first event is October 5th and 6th. So it's literally a couple of weeks from now. If you're interested in coming, getting examined for it, getting it done, learning more, you can reach out. Again, my website is leighdundas.com. Click on the Healthy Living page. And right now you can just click, you put your name and phone number and email in, and we'll call you back and we'll get you some more data. We're also getting our website up and running where it'll have all the content and you can learn more.
Let me interrupt. I think it's the stem cell therapy link, not the healthy living. Healthy living's for the water, right?
Yeah, but that one's password protected. So if you can't get into that one, go back to the Healthy Living and just fill out your name and email, and we'll contact you with all the passwords. So.
Okay, fair. There is a form on there, I see.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I wanted to ask, so you had made a question, you made a comment about Gaza. You said, are they funded by communists? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, but Hamas is the one that is primarily active in the Israeli conflict right now. And if you look, Hamas has been a listed terrorist organization since 1997 by our State Department. So back in, I think it was October or whenever it first started going up, you know, all of these campuses. And by the way, so I've got a college-age daughter. She has friends at college campuses, at USC, at UC schools, at Columbia. They would go onto these campuses and stick microphones in front of the people who were going to the quad to protest. And they're like, why are you protesting? And I literally watched clips where the girls like, wait, why are we protesting? They didn't even know why they were protesting. So, and then it was really going off again in April, right? And May, when they were trying to graduate. Now, mind you, this is 4 years after these kids did not have COVID graduations, right? They got to graduate in their cars. So COVID screwed them out, pardon my French, of their graduation the first time around. It's the same class that's now about to graduate from college. And when we went in and did investigative undercover sort of reporting, or I just quizzed my kids' friends on this, I'm like, who's on campus? They're like, this is not student-led. Even at the liberal campuses, they're like, this is not student-led. When we sent in people, Epoch Times, I think was one of them, or maybe it was one of the other guys, OAN, they had an undercover reporter. They would go in, it was adults from communist groups, Marxist groups, socialist groups, going in and using the campus as a staging facility and busing in people. So the people you saw many times in the quads either didn't know what it was about, they shouldn't have been there, or they were not actually kids at college, nor were they professors at that college. So USC, because it's in a, you know, kind of the ghetto out there, I went to USC, I can say this, is completely, it's an island. They have walls around it. They actually have manned guard gates on all their openings. Usually the gates are open. They locked that stuff down. They kicked the protesters off. And when LAPD has satellite offices on the campus to keep, I mean, that is a protected campus, and it's not campus police, it's an LAPD satellite. When they went to close that thing down, I mean, they can hermetically seal it almost when they want to. And they discovered all the protesters that they were arresting who wouldn't leave. They were not USC students. They were not USC staff. They were not USC professors. They were random communists walking onto campus and just using it as a staging facility, making it look like our kids wanted that when they didn't. But yeah, I mean, this is the state we're living in, and that's why our college kids need to know better. They need to be educated. That's why I'm trying to do these courses to educate them.
And I also
yeah.
wanted to ask as a follow-up, what should we be doing right now for civil and medical rights post-COVID? Because I feel like a lot of shit went down during the COVID years, and stuff that I would have thought had happened. And I'd like to know what your thoughts. I mean, I know this monkeypox thing's being pushed, so what do you think? I mean, obviously get your book and your course, learn how to say no, but what else?
Well, first of all, you can't fight if you're not healthy. So you owe it to yourself to be as healthy emotionally and physically as you can be. So if there's a high oxygen water, even that I'm not pushing, that can have any of the effects that I've run you through that Europe is getting, like, go be healthy. There's tons of things we could be talking about. We don't have time to right now. Do everything you can to get you and your family healthy, eat organic, quit breathing in and drinking in bad stuff. And then separately, get your mind right. Be connected to other people who are fighting for good. And I say fighting, I mean peacefully fighting for good, using their First Amendment rights. But you don't use it, you lose it. Okay, a democracy and a constitutional republic require the will of the people to be exerted. We can make our government conform to our wishes, but not if we just sit here like lumps of clay or potted plants sitting on a log. You need to actually use all of your amendment rights. You have a right to bear arms. You don't know how to use a gun, start going to the range, okay? You don't know how to use your First Amendment rights, go take a constitutional law class, take my course. I don't really teach the constitutional law. I teach how to execute your First Amendment right. But it's not hard. People have an amazing amount of soft underbelly that they do not like you shining a light on and kicking at. And you don't need to be violent. You can just be forcefully using your First Amendment rights, and all of the evildoers in your town, most of the time, will resign themselves. I got my health officer to resign. I got the second in command of the California State Health Department to resign. I got the head of the FAA to resign, all in the middle of their terms. You know what I did? I grabbed a microphone and I invited all my friends, and I did a mini impromptu press conference, and I invited the press, and I made sure all my friends who have platforms like Diana's and other people were doing viral video streaming of it. And those evildoers do not want that harsh light, like we talked about earlier, shined in their closet, and they roll it back. They walk it back. And in many times they will get ousted. The rest of the board will say, you're resigning. We're going to give you an option to resign. And if you don't, we'll force you out. And that's how you get her done. And then you put a good person in the newly created vacancy, or you just train your board. You do something stupid and unconstitutional. It will be very painful for you monetarily and during the board meetings and personally, reputationally, and you won't get reelected. And at that point, they will pull it back, and you hit them. You hit them figuratively, and you start Pavlovian training them that if they ring the wrong bell, it's going to be painful. And so then they start ringing the right bell. And it is all something that is absolutely within the power, the duty, and the know-how of every soccer mom who's ever graduated third grade. You don't need $1 million. You don't need a lawyer. You need a Walmart, a bullhorn, and my course. And to be pissed off and focused on the right target. That's it.
So it's not even, and then it's not even hiring a you said a detective to find out something bad, but basically just to shine a light on what the stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
Our local school board, there was some meetings where there were people in that, and sort of kind of like when we had the Black Lives Matter in Minnesota, where it was head to toe totally covered.
Yeah.
Where like Antifa terrorists look,
Yeah.
and there were two people out there at the school board meeting, and I don't know why they weren't. It was very unsettling. I saw a video of it. It's like, whoa, that is our local school board meeting.
They were bussing in Antifa, but I got news for you. Two can play that game. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I'd go, but I don't want to in case somebody takes a picture of my husband's business. Burka yourself, baby. Go wear a mask. The only darn time I would wear a mask. You got that consideration? Put a ball cap on, put a wig on, put a mask on. Rock and roll. It's a numbers game. You need bodies in the shop. You need outspoken people. You know, Antifa doesn't want to show its face at a rally. They don't want to be arrested. They don't want to be called out. You don't have to either. Now, do I perfectly agree with that? No. I think regardless of who you are, you have a duty to speak out. But if you can't afford it because of your reputation, fine, do it the way Antifa does. Take a cue from the left. Two can play the game, like I said. So yeah, it is. And you need to know when they have these people in the meeting, they're bussing them in. We had the same at OCBO, Board of Ed, the day that I did the video that went viral around the world, where I was like, you will not be COVID vaccinating our 5 to 18-year-old kids on campus without even telling the parents or getting their informed consent. The last people who did that were the Nazis, and it did not go well for them. I will bring the force of all good.
That was happening, not in our school district, but that was happening in the world, like in the nation.
Yeah.
And apparently the kids were trading it for candy or tacos or, and that's, you know, that's again, an attempt. I've seen a lot of this the last few years where you're separating the parents from the kids as far as medical. And even we have an act that became law here in Colorado where you can talk to kids about sterilization, birth control, STDs. Yes, you should be able to do that. But many other things, even in as young as like 11 and 13, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, they're making inroads, and you need to take back your kid's education. And if you can't force the school to do what you need, take the kid out of the school and find a better school, private school, homeschool. Yeah.
I really wish I could have done that. I really was lobbying for that, but it was,
it's a hard row. We got so many fights to fight, but you can't win the fight without the right tools, without the right mindset, without the right playbook. And that's why Flynn was like, look, Leigh, you got a working hamster wheel, and every soccer mom from Nebraska to Maine to Texas to Iowa needs to know it.
Have to have the system and the tools.
Yeah, so that's why I did the course. I mean, it wasn't like when I was a little kid, I said, oh, I want to be a college professor when I grow up after I've been a lawyer for 30 years, but it's really a gift from my playbook to yours, so you're not having to reinvent the wheel when I already, took the time to figure it out over the last 53 months. But yeah, we got to do better, and it starts by being alive. So keep yourself healthy. We've given you some health hacks to do that with: stem cell, water, you name it, and then get the data you need to actually make effective plays in your county. And you know what? You want to be behind the scenes because you got the money and you can't sacrifice your reputation. Fine, you fund it, and you have somebody else do it. You don't want your face to be seen? Put a burqa on and go. Like I said, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. You've just got to be willing to go. Like, not to quote Nike, but just do it at some point and build the plane while you're flying it. It usually works out better than you think. All right, I got to run. I got another appointment, but you guys, thank you so much for having me, Diana, today. It was really an honor and a pleasure. Can't wait to be back. And thank all you guys who are watching, because you are the ones who are going to be the heroes upon whom we've been waiting, and the ones who are going to keep this country great for our kids.
Thank you, Leigh. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Diana Sproul, Transform Health, transformhealth.biz, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you, Leigh. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Take care.
Thank you, Leigh. Thanks for meeting with us. So her book is Just Stand Up, My Fight for Freedom, and that talks about sex trafficking and how to avoid having your own child exploited within America, within affluent areas. And the course is called The Psychology of the Winner, and it's only $99. And she gives us a lot of tools for not much money, and you don't have to be a lawyer to do this, apparently. She's going to share her playbook with us. So I'm Diana Sproul, dianasproul.com, and Sproul is SPROUL, or transformhealth.biz. And please check out my own shop page, and I've got many things for sale, including homeopathic charts, courses, French lessons, salves, herbal teas, and more. So talk to you soon, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.